Hello folks. I hope all is well. Let's get the kettle on actually. It's currently Saturday the 2nd of November when I am recording this. I'm just home. It's 9:15 p.m. just home from Galway. I was at the IPF Connacht Championships. That's the Irish Powerlifting Federation Connacht Championships today in Galway at TJ Reid's Health and Fitness Gym. I had a client, Lucia, competing, and she did absolutely fantastic. So I'm feeling pretty good now after that. So it was all good. Everything went as we had planned. Actually, probably better, than we had planned or anticipated. So couldn't have been better. So spent the day up there, coaching her, helping her out with her attempt selection. And that sort of thing. Her boyfriend Dearman was also there, and he's actually also a client of mine, so it was really nice to meet up with the two of them in general, because that's not something you always get to do when you work with people solely online, yet you do still begin to develop relationships with people through coaching. And those two in particular have had a number of Skype calls with me. They're good clients for communicating and everything like that, so you do feel like you develop relationships with people through coaching, and it's always nice to get to meet people in person. So that was a nice little novelty. So before we go any further, let's actually look over some of Lucia's lifts, just some of the ones I have on my phone. I should get some higher quality videos later in the week, and I might post those in this video if I get them in time, or else in the next video. So here are some of the highlights from today. So in summary, Lucia finished with a 132.5 kilo squat, which is a very solid squat, and we were very happy with that, because essentially the goal for Lucia is to essentially break the junior national records before she's out of the junior class, and she's pretty much nearly there. She's got the junior squat record in her. For sure, it's currently 133 or 133 and a half, and she squatted 132 and a half. We went with that conservatively, like one that we were kind of humming and hawing prior to the competition whether or not we'd aim for 135 on the third lift, but we called it on the day and just said, look, 132 and a half, let's get this down, because obviously you still have bench and deadlift to follow, and you don't want to either like risk failing or have to grind so hard that you're going to lose kilos on your later lifts because you're more fatigued. So I think that was a smart decision, and it was great to get the 3 lifts on the board. So 132.5 kilo squat, 67.5 kilo bench press. Again, really happy with that. She's never bench pressed more than 65 kilos, so that was a big win. And again, still lots of potential to improve. One of the things that we did in the lead up to this competition was Lucia transitioned to a wider grip. So that was a bit of a change since her last meet in August. So that has played in her favor and will likely to continue to be useful, because she's getting more comfortable with it, and she's able to express her strength on the 67.5 kilo. If you watch the video, I think I had that one in there. One thing you will notice is the bar shifted forward a little bit on the press. So that's both good and bad. Like, obviously it's bad because it wasn't, the rep could have been better in a sense. Like, that's the downside, but I would actually look at it as more of a positive thing, because the way I look at it is that was just a very small technical flaw in the day that, had it not happened, her strength expression would have been even better. So that rep would have looked even better if there wasn't that small little loss of balance. So I think that is pretty promising for the future, and we should see that bench press getting north of 70 kilos pretty soon. So that was very good. Deadlift was absolutely fantastic. I mean, we went 130, 140, and then 150. And to be honest, if you looked at that 150 video, I don't think that was one of the ones I had in there. But the 150, like, it moved so smoothly. It looked very similar to the 140. 140 moved better than it ever has in training. So like, I mean, there's more than 150 there, and I was very happy with that, and Lucia was obviously very happy with that too. So it was a very, very good meet, a productive prep. Everything went according to plan. You know, the weight cut in the end went, you know, according to plan. There was no need for anything drastic. Came in perfectly in terms of like getting in under 63 kilos. So everything was just really, really smooth. And in terms of like overall planning and preparation, then essentially what we did for this meet, like the reason I'm discussing this is because I think it'll be insightful for those of you, even if you're not like interested in powerlifting, there's things that you can take away from this in terms of like just the general concepts or the specific training practices. So like when Lucia first started working with me, we were, you know, a couple of months out from her August meet, okay? So we basically were looking at that meet and this meet, today's meet, and saying, all right, look, we're going to have to, you know, the best thing that we could do is to put our sights on today's meet, because this was the actual important one. The previous meet was kind of a less formal meet. It wasn't as important. So we decided to use that as a sort of a trial meet, like a warm-up. So it was like, right, let's get some numbers on the board there, get used to the competition environment, get used to the demands of a powerlifting competition, and then really work towards today as being the day where you're really going to try to express your strength. So in terms of how that was reflected then in programming, basically what we did was, rather than actually having a deliberate peak for the last meet, what we did was we essentially treated that last meet as if it was just a weekend after a quote-unquote deload week. So training volume had been quite high, specificity wasn't as high as it would normally be leading up to a meet, and there was a lot more quote-unquote accessory work or volume allocated to exercises and muscle groups that aren't necessarily the most specific to powerlifting. However, then in the lead up to this meet, we employed a more, you know, typical traditional powerlifting peak type of approach, whereby we transition towards increasing specificity, bringing down volume, bringing up intensity, and having our lighter week of training and our openers tested essentially and ready to go the week before. So essentially what you're looking at there is that in the initial phase prior to the first meet, we had, you know, higher volumes, we had some higher intensity work, and when I say intensity, I mean percentage of 1 rep max. So more work in the 1 to 5 repetition range, let's say, would be high intensity training. So we would have had some singles, but we would have been doing, you know, more 4s, more 5s, more 6s. Whereas as we came closer, then there was some more doubles, some more triples, more emphasis on the singles. That sort of thing. Less overall working sets, less exercises like, for example, leg presses and dumbbell presses and rows, and, you know, they're less specific to the sporting demands. So in the weeks leading up to the competition, that we're not going to be allocating our efforts towards those, because it's not a productive use of her energy or resources, you know. So that's just a general like 10,000 foot view of what the plan of action actually looked like. Both times we essentially aimed to get in under 63 kilos. The first time calories had been actually lower on the lead up to that point, but because in August then we were essentially already below 63 kilos, we treated the time between then and now as a period where we were trying to just basically increase calories. So we were bringing calories up a touch by a few hundred calories, and basically letting weight slightly trend upward a little bit, but not beyond like 1 to 1.5 kilos over where we actually needed to be today, so that then we just needed to make a couple of adjustments in the week before to come in under the weight bracket, and that all went, you know, swimmingly. So yeah, that is a 10,000 foot view of what the competition preparation. So in the last meet, she finished with a 120 kilo squat, whereas today she opened with a 120 kilo squat, finishing with a 132.5 kilo squat, and looking back, 135 is probably there. So again, promising for the future. Bench press last meet finished with 62.5 kilos. As I said, she had hit 65 kilos in the gym, and then at this meet she had 67.5 kilos. So again, very productive, very happy with that progress. And then the deadlift, I believe she finished with 135 kilos at the last meet, and finished with 150 kilos today. So overall, I mean, very, very productive, and very happy with the progress. So looking forward to seeing what the next, you know, year or so, or 10 months or so until you know, the competition she cares about a bit more. Looking forward to seeing what happens in that time frame. So yeah, as I said, you know, the purpose of discussing this stuff, these kind of like quote unquote client case studies, is for it to be illustrative, for and hopefully informative and you know, instructive, that you can actually take something away and think to yourself, like maybe, you know, should I be thinking about maybe having different phases in my training? You know, if I'm trying to test my strength, when should I be doing that? Because that's something that people don't think through very often. You know, you often see people who, you know, they'll say that they hit a certain number at this point in time, but it could have been when they were doing like really high volume training at the end of a training phase, and then they hit another number at another point in time when they're in a lower fatigue state and they've been practicing that repetition range more specifically. And I guess the thing I would ask you to question there is that, have you truly gained strength, or are you just expressing strength because it's not now masked by fatigue and you've had the chance to practice the skill that is required for the specific strength test that you are talking about? Because that is one of the things that I think people often overlook. One example of where this plays out is in people who use a training approach that is oriented around doing like one set to failure and changing exercises every few weeks. So what you see in those approaches is that, for example, if you change exercises every 4 weeks, when you start a particular exercise, there's going to be an initial period of strength gain, strength gain that can be illusory, because basically what you're doing is you're relearning the exercise, you're relearning how to get to your maximal level of effort and express strength that was already there. So in that case, if you're using that type of training approach, you might see short-term increases in strength, but I guess the red flag that I would ask you to look out for there is that if you're then coming back to that exercise again in a few months and you're back where you started, then you may want to question whether or not you're truly moving forward. Now, if you are rotating your exercises and your whatever training approach you're using, and you can see that, you know, month on month, quarterly, you know, every 6 months, whatever, that a given lift is increasing, you know, very clearly, then you're all good, you know. But if what you're looking at is that you hit a leg press PB in January, and then you hit a squat PB in March, and then you hit a deadlift PB in June, and then when you rotate back through those, they're just kind of the same again, then I would be questioning whether or not you were truly making progress, because that is what a lot of people do. They say they make what I call conditional personal bests. You know, they'll say, oh, this is our new personal best on this lift, and it's like, but didn't you do that like 2 years ago? And then it's like, oh yeah, but since I came back, or since I started doing it again. And they're the types of traps that you don't want to get yourself stuck in if you're serious about your progress. I mean, if you're not serious about your progress, I mean, me personally, like I don't like view myself as a serious lifter. Like at the moment, it isn't you know, a significant part of my goal. So I mean, for me, like I'm not too stressed if my deadlift is, you know, going up month on month. But if you're competing in powerlifting, it's important, you know, obviously not month on month. Well, that depends on where you are in your training career. If you're advanced, if you've been training for 5 to 8 years, 10 years, whatever, you're probably not going to see month to month increases in your deadlift. But I mean, you know, if you're not seeing some increases over time, then obviously you have to adjust something in your approach. So yeah, they're just some thoughts, some musings. Let me make a cup of tea, and then we'll continue our chat, because I owe you guys more on the YouTubes. How long has this been boiled for? Probably like 10 minutes. Other than that, lads, this week, as I said, Galway today, it was a super busy week, intense week in college, man, Jesus. Things are getting heavy, because we've got our exams in 5 weeks, and I don't normally curse that much, but that came on us quick. Like, I feel like I'm in my first couple of weeks, and then I'm like, oh wait, it's actually November, hello. And we've got our exams in 5 weeks, we've got a marathon in 4 weeks, so things are picking up. So yeah, in terms of college, just super busy at the moment. And yeah, not much else to say about it at the moment. If anyone has any questions, I guess, about how college is going, you're more than welcome to ask. I actually have been requested as well, and will do a video on the process of getting into medical school, medicine, whatever you want to call it, because I know some people are interested in that process. And I remember when I first started thinking about it, I was looking for loads of videos on YouTube, particularly from Irish people, because what you'll see is that there's lots of videos that aren't, you know, they're from like Americans, and you know, so I will discuss that at some point. I will discuss how we got here. It's relatively simple, but you know, I appreciate that when you're first kind of thinking about it, you're like, all right, just tell me what the steps are, like, so that I don't have to waste my time on things, whatever. But yeah, that is other things to update you on. I meant to, yeah, this is a thing. Because I'm not on Instagram at the moment, not using it, I wanted to use these vlogs as an opportunity to kind of update you on the things that I would normally update you on in my Instagram story. So current read, or one of them, is The Emperor of All Maladies by Dr. Siddhartha Mukherjee. Siddhartha Mukherjee. He was the author of The Gene as well. It's quite a popular book. But The Emperor of All Maladies, a biography of cancer. It is a really damn good book. I'm really enjoying it. I think, like, these are the types of books that, like, you know, when you see those idiots on Facebook that are like, cancer is the drug companies and the government, etc. Doctors really, they have the cure for cancer, but they don't want to give it to you because they want to keep you sick, and doctors want to keep you sick. Like, it actually hurts my brain. It hurts my brain so much. Those people, and the people who say like cancer was invented, like, that's the thing. You know, there's people out there that believe that cancer has just been invented in like the last 100 years or something. You need to read books, man. Read books. Like, it's incredible the level of confidence that people will, you know, convict you with without having any knowledge of the thing that they're talking about. Not that I know much about cancer at all, but I mean, like, I don't go around saying that doctors want to keep you sick. You know, it's pretty silly. So yeah, that's a good book anyway. Basically, The Emperor of All Maladies, discussing the history of cancer, things such as, you know, examples of cancer that were found in mummies thousands of years ago, osteosarcomas type of cancer within the bone. So that would obviously be preserved much better than other types of cancers, because the bone is going to be calcified and preserved. You know, discussing the basics of what cancer actually is for people who are unaware. That's always a useful thing to know. Discussing, you know, the basic facts about how, well, it doesn't go into that in much detail, I guess, but I guess it does. The different types of cancer, you know, the fact that people think that, you know, when people say cancer, they say it as if it's one thing, whereas, like, cancer is essentially defining the process or characteristics of countless different types of these diseases. Diseases of growth, I guess you could say. But yeah, this isn't a vlog about cancer. I just wanted to say that is a good book. Another book that would go along with that, that's quite good, that I was reading, is Cancer Ward by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. And funnily enough, this author actually, I just said this author because I don't want to keep trying to pronounce his name. He actually references Cancer Ward in that book, so I was like, oh, cool. You feel like a little bit of like you're on the path when you're reading a book and the author references a book that you were also just reading, because you're like, damn, how did I end up here? But obviously that's just because if your interests are following a given line that they're bringing you to buying certain books, then one would expect there's going to be some link between those books too. But anyway, yeah, that's another good book. I don't want to just continue with incoherent mumbling. I'm trying to think, is there anything else that is worth informing you of on? Oh yeah, I mentioned there, I was like, oh yeah, I'm doing a marathon in 4 weeks. People are going to be like, hey guys, what are you doing? Like, what's the plan? Tomorrow, the plan is doing a 25k tomorrow. That's the plan. I did 21k on Monday, or was it Sunday? Today's Saturday. A few days ago, basically, nearly a week ago, I did 21 kilometers, and that felt good because for those of you who've been paying attention, I mentioned I had a bit of a calf strain, so that was annoying. The calf strain came as a result of the 30-kilometer run that I did a few weeks ago. That's the longest distance I've covered up to now, and the fact that I've done that, I'm kind of like, I'm probably too comfortable. I'm like, yeah, I did that, I'll do the marathon, I'll be grand. But yeah, I will be grand, like, but I don't want to just finish it with a, you know, totally useless time either. I mean, I will be happy to finish, but I'd like to do so in a respectable time for one's first marathon. So 25k tomorrow. I won't be doing that at like a crazy fast pace. It won't be as fast as I did the 30k, to be honest. I mean, like per kilometer. Because of that calf strain, I'm still trying to kind of, you know, just take my time, bring it back. No rush in ramping up the pace. It's one of the biggest mistakes people make training with running. They just want to go fucking fast, you know, and they won't take the time ever. You know, people are just getting into running and it's like, I'm gonna go out, I can do 5k. Fucking absolutely dying. You see it on out on the roads every night in the evening. Go out and look at people running. They're going along. Fucking literally. That's what people are doing. And then you have they're the novice runners. And then you have and it's not just a difference of fitness, but then you have the elite runners. I'm definitely not one of those, but you have them there, you know, they've got this real controlled breathing, they know what they're doing, they're composed, cool, calm, collected. It's like, are you really running like fucking 30 minutes per kilometer? Are you serious? But they are, and that comes as a result of not wanting to drive yourself into the ground every single session. Like, it's the same with resistance training. It's exactly what people do in the gym. They go into the gym, they're like, PB city, baby, as many reps as they can every single session. It's not what you want to do. You want to take your time. You want to, you know, have sessions that are a little bit easier. You want to have sessions that are fucking pushing you hard, but you want to have some sessions where you're, you know, leaving a couple of reps in the tank. You want to have some sessions where you're not running as fast as you possibly can, you know, trying to race people on the street, you know, and that all comes down to like appropriate planning, you know, having a plan of action. Like, what is your plan of action? When you go out for a run, are you just saying, I'm just going to run, or are you saying, right, today's session is going to be a little bit easier, I'm going to pick a distance, or I'm going to pick a time, and here's my pacing, you know, that's what I'll do. Tomorrow, when I go out, I'll have my plan, distance, and then my pace. My pace will likely be about 5 minutes 30 per kilometer. When I did the 30k, it was just under 5 minutes per kilometer. So I'm still working with a slower pace because I know that my calf gets aggravated a little bit more by faster paces than it does by total distance. So that is strategic. It's not random. It's not me just going out and seeing how fast I can go over 25 kilometers, because that's what people do. And this is what you see. You see their first kilometer, they're running at like 170, 180 beats per minute, and that's not sustainable. And then what you see is their pacing begins to slowly drop off until they're barely fucking crawling along in the last couple of kilometers. You know, you see those people, and their legs are flailing and their hands are flailing, and you know, that's not training. That's fine in competition. You know, if you're trying to finish your 100k race or your marathon or whatever, totally fine. But in training, you shouldn't be dying unless it's like purposeful dying, like such as interval runs or something like that. But yeah, I think you get the picture, man. I think you get the picture. Tea is going down here. As you'll notice, I wasn't stirring the tea bag like a madman. I mean, if anyone like is a big stirrer of their tea bag, you need to check out. Very funny actually. How to make tea tutorial by James Kavanagh. He's the gas man. but yeah, he's got a great tea tutorial for those of you who don't know how to make tea. And now this wouldn't be approved, I'm sure, by any Irish granny, but Irish skim milk is the milk that Laura buys, so this is what's going in the tea. It's basically like water. But yeah, that's the crack, I suppose. Have any other news now? Other news, Laura has actually gone to see The Joker this evening. I went to see it 2 weeks ago. Unreal. Would recommend. 10 out of 10. Would watch again. Will watch again. Excellent movie. I enjoy movies that are, you know, they're trying to deliver psychological messages or lessons without telling you that they are delivering these messages. I always find that useful, especially when you've got something that is open to interpretation and it's likely to be controversial depending on your worldview. I think that's always good, regardless of whether or not you agree with the worldview that is being depicted. I think, you know, it's productive to get people thinking, because people don't think very often. And I think thinking is good. You know what day it is? Sunday. That can only mean one thing. It's time for my long run. Alright, so today is the day that I do my longer running, probably in the duration of 2 to 3 hours of running. So the plan of action, preliminary plan of action at least, is to do 25 kilometers, but I will kind of auto-regulate that. The range I've set for myself is 25 to 30 kilometers. Preliminarily planning to stay at the bottom of that, because did a bit of path training for the last couple of weeks, but to be honest, it's feeling more or less back to baseline now, so I will start with a bit of a more conservative pace, I think. Might auto-regulate that, you know, get my watch with me, so I'll see where my heart rate is at, I'll see what my subjective and objective performance indicators are looking like, and then I'll kind of auto-regulate. The plan of action at the moment is to run 25 to 30 kilometers at an average pace of between 5 and 5:30, probably the higher end, 5 minutes 30 seconds that is per kilometer. So that's the plan of action. Big run. We'll probably set it up. The way I'm going to set it up is run from here. I'll run to a place roughly kind of 12 to 13 kilometers away. I think I know where that is, where there's actually a shop, and then I'll just get like a couple of sweets or like a Lucas Sport or something down that, and then come back. Because to be honest, anything over like 20 kilometers, I do notice a difference if I can get a little bit of a carbohydrate drink, or even just a drink in general, in, like, rather than just being, you know, lower on fuel and lower on hydration for the latter half of the run. So if I can get that in, that'd be fantastic. And you know, anything under an hour, I mean, like, the benefits are probably going to be, you know, less obvious. But when you start to get north of an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours of consistent exercise, you're going to notice a little bit more of a benefit from supplementing with some sort of carbohydrate drink. So that is the plan of action. I'm also having a coffee right now before I go. Coffee/caffeine does improve endurance performance, so that's a little tip for people who are interested in improving their endurance. Caffeine is definitely something that you might want to consider. However, one of the things that caffeine and coffee in particular, one of the effects they can have for some people, is that it can upset their stomach a little bit, and depending on whether or not like gastrointestinal distress is a problem for you when you run, you might want to, you know, be somewhat conservative when introducing caffeine or introducing coffee before a run, because that GI distress, that can be a problem for some runners. I know sometimes for me, if I eat too soon before a run, I just can't do it. You know, for me, I have to eat or have my last like substantial meal at least 3 to 4 hours before I do a longer run. I had my breakfast this morning at about 7:30 a.m. and it's currently 11:30 a.m. So I've given myself a good 4 hours, but my meal is substantial enough that actually I still feel, you know, kind of full. But you know, I don't have that much food in my system. I know it's had time to kind of pass through a little bit. I've also done my morning number 2, of course. That's also a priority